There are stories that should never be told out loud, but this is one of them. Stay until the end because what the Berlanga family did still shakes the town where it happened. My grandmother used to narrate this story at family gatherings. She swore that it was real, that it had happened in her own town in the heart of the country, just after the middle of the last century. The Berlanga family was the wealthiest in the area. They owned businesses in distant cities, but for some reason they never left that town. From an imposing, gigantic hacienda, they governed with the weight of their money, even if they had never set foot in politics. Behind his wealth, however, lay a horrendous secret. For years, disappearances began to be noticed. First, men left, who were said to have gone to seek their fortune in the north. Then it was boys, girls, and over time, even children. Later, entire families stopped knowing each other. No one came back. No one explained anything. The fear began to grow. Old women in the village murmured stories of witches, of spirits that took the inhabitants away in the dark. But the truth was much worse. One day, a peasant was loading his cart of chiles to Guadalajara. On the way, near the Berlanga Hacienda, a girl of about 12 years old crossed him. She ran desperately, screaming for help. The peasant hurriedly climbed it up, and one of his assistants tried to help her. The little girl was covered in wounds, deep bites, with marks that looked like they were made by human teeth. Some small, some monstrously large. When her shoulder was cleaned, the girl squealed in pain. And then they saw him. He was missing a huge piece of flesh torn from the roots, with the mark of a deformed and grotesque mouth. In tears, the peasant decided to take her to the city, where she handed her over to the authorities. An investigator interviewed her and the men who helped her. That same night, one of the peasant's laborers disappeared forever. He never returned to his family, nor was he found in hospital or police station. The next day, the researcher returned to the hospital, but he did not do it alone. He was accompanied by an elegant man, a powerful businessman, coincidentally, a business rival of the Berlangas. They promised justice, and although the town police protected the Berlangas, this mysterious character had even stronger connections. It was said that he had spoken directly with Miguel Alemán, who was about to assume the presidency. A few weeks later, the entire town woke up with a bang. Hundreds of policemen armed to the teeth burst into the Berlanga Hacienda. The confrontation was brutal. The peons and servants defended their masters with enormous fury, as if they were possessed. Some witnesses said that they looked like wild beasts, maids who threw themselves tooth and nail, young men who fought until they received several bullets. They didn't look human, and they did not stop until they fell dead. When they finally managed to get in, what they discovered on those walls froze everyone's blood. What they found on the hacienda was indescribable. In hidden basements and locked rooms they found hundreds, literally hundreds of bodies in various states of decomposition. Men, women, old people, children who had barely learned to walk. They had all been devoured at some point, as if they had been victims of a monstrous hunger. The testimonies collected afterwards shook the newspapers of the time. There was talk of gruesome rituals where the victims were taken alive, tied up, while the Berlanga family bit them little by little, prolonging their torment. Others watched, forced to witness, waiting with horror for the turn in which they would be devoured. The girl who escaped had been captured along with her sister. When it was their turn, they both fought with all their might. The eldest, barely 14 years old, pounced on Miguelito, the youngest of the Berlangas. In desperation, she gouged out one of his eyes as he devoured his sister like a beast. In the confusion, the little girl managed to escape by running into the bush. The older sister, on the other hand, paid with a gruesome death. She was hung by her wrists and slowly devoured, for 2 days until the authorities found her dying. The fury of the police was brutal. They took those who were left alive from the Berlanga family, but along the way, between bribes, political contacts and dark influences, most of them disappeared. Only Don Abel, the patriarch of almost 70 years, was arrested, but there was never a trial. The others were never heard from again. The people, enraged, lynched the few laborers who had survived the attack, and although an attempt was made to bury the story, the ruins of the hacienda remained as a reminder. Decades later, my grandmother said that in the 90s, when she revisited her village, Some children swore that between the crumbling walls you could still see a man with an eye patch wandering at night. They said it was Miguelito, forever marked by the revenge of that girl who dared to resist. To this day, that story is still alive in the conversations of the old people of the town, and I wonder, how much did the Berlangas pay for their freedom? In which city or town did they continue their macabre rituals? Every time I read about missing people in the newspapers, I remember this story and feel a chill that keeps me awake at night. And now tell me, do you think that the Berlangas disappeared forever, or that they still walk among us,